2020 has not been the greatest year. That is putting things mildly, but we still have had the chance to see some pretty good rugby in various competitions. I have picked individual matches from each of these competitions, which I have done videos on throughout the year. I'm going to pick a game. I'll see if I can link the highlights to those games in the description. So if you want to check out the game's highlights before I talk about them, then you'll kind of have a way of avoiding any spoilers, although these are all games which are well in the past. So, yeah, you guys can let me know your thoughts on some games that were some pretty good ones throughout the year. I'm going to start with Super Rugby 2020, the competition which was cancelled due to the pandemic, but we still did get in, I think it was like 7 or 8 rounds of games before that happened. So I've gone with the Hurricanes and the Chiefs, 24 points to 27. I think it was round 2 of Super Rugby 2020. When picking these games, I tried to have a look, because I got a bad memory to start with, but I had a look through all the fixtures of that year, and which games could I actually actively remembered what happened. And what I mainly remembered about this one is Jordie Barrett kicks a penalty at the death to win this one. I went back and watched the highlights myself. It's a mixture of some pretty slick hands, some pretty poor defense. So if Super Rugby is not a competition you usually watch, it's worth going to have a look. And yeah, last minute penalty. The Hurricanes go 36 phases before winning a penalty. And Jordie Barrett, cool as you like it, despite the cowbells of the Chiefs fans, he slots that penalty to win the game right at the death. I mean, the Sharks were good in that competition. The Hawaras were okay. The Sunwolves were still a thing. So it's going to be a season we look back on as the last of its kind. It never got finished. But yeah, Hurricanes, Chiefs in the 2020 season was a bit of an epic one. After that, I've gone with Six Nations. It's another 24-point win, this one. 24 points to 0 was the scoreline at one point. France are running rampant. Olivon, I think, gets a couple of tries. Dupont and Ntamak are doing their thing. This new French team under Gaultier looks to be the business. And then Johnny Mayman gets a couple of absolute wonder tries. Like, he got a lot of credit for scoring a wonder try against Ireland, but I had forgotten just how good his tries were against France. If you haven't seen them, well worth a look. England lose it, but by getting that bonus point at the death, like I said, in terms of the overall Six Nations, that bonus point is the difference between them and the other teams at the end. So, yeah, England end up winning the Six Nations largely due to that result at the end, getting a bonus point. So France win the game, but England win the trophy. Next one, we get the pandemic, so Six Nations gets postponed. Obviously, it ends later in the year. One of the first competitions to get up and running is Super Rugby Aotearoa. So these 5 New Zealand Super Rugby franchises go at it head-to-head, and it was a pretty cracking competition. The one game I have gone with, Blues, Hurricanes, 30 points to 20. I went to that game. It was the first game back. Super Rugby Aotearoa at Eden Park. I think it was the second game of Super Rugby Aotearoa. There's like 43,000 fans at the game. Like, after being in weeks and weeks of lockdown, to go to a place with 43 other thousand people was electric, man. Electric atmosphere. Beauden Barrett was making his Blues debut after moving from the Hurricanes, so there was a whole bit of drama about that, playing his former club. Dane Cole scored a try on the wing, galloping from meters away. Guess who tried to stop him? Beauden Barrett, his former teammate. They all celebrated by rubbing his head and whatnot. And Caleb Clark, before he was an All Black, scored a try. So, yeah, man, the Blues got to win. What can you say? Proper electric atmosphere for that one. So, of all the Super Rugby Aotearoa games, I think that was the one that I remember most clearest. Anyway, probably because I went to it. For Super Rugby AU, gone with the Force and the Rebels. The Force, I definitely have a soft spot for the Force since they were kicked out of Super Rugby by the Aussie rugby administrators. To have them finally back And they were playing the Rebels. It wasn't the first game for the Force back in Super Rugby, but it was like their first game up against the Rebels, which was the team which was also potentially on the chopping block. So these guys got cut while these guys didn't get cut. Half of these guys' players ended up going to this team. Their coach ended up going there. So there was definitely some kind of bad blood between these teams. The match goes 25-20. It finished 20 points apiece at full time. 80 minutes. They have to go to like super time or extra time. Reece Hodge, if you watched any of the Tri Nations games, you'll know that he missed a few last minute kicks to win the game. He also missed a kick to win that one for the Rebels. However, they did get a try pretty shortly on into the super time. So, yeah, it was a crazy game. Crazy game. I felt sorry for the Force because that was maybe their best chance to actually get a win. Next, moving on to Super Rugby Unlocked. So Super Rugby 2020 died, and it kind of spawned off these three, domestic competitions, including teams like the New Zealand one, which is the standard 5 team. This one included the Force, which was added to replace, I guess, the Sunwolves. And Unlocked included the Pumas and the Griquas, teams I hadn't really seen play before. And it was the Pumas in one of the games that was kind of crazy. 37 points to 42. It was a bit of a controversial one. The refereeing was definitely under the microscope. Forward passes potentially not being called, but the Stormers, at one point, at halftime, it was 30 points to 14. And the Pumas actually scored next. So at one point, it was 37-14. The Stormers, and that one, managed to score 3 tries in the final 10 minutes. It was an absolutely crazy game. Herschel Yankee set up, I think, the first Stormers try when they actually went into the lead with a charge down. He must be the shortest guy on the pitch, but he got a charge down. And I got to see 2 Pumas players a lot who really impressed. It was fun to bunk and Jandre Rudolph. Both of those guys, top class players. Rudolph actually moved on, I think, to the Cheetahs not long after. Yeah, it was really cool to see the Pumas because I hadn't really seen them play before. They got so close, but Galant got a try at the death. So, yeah, 37 points to 42. It was a bit of a cracking game. The Champions Cup, well, we've seen kind of 2 iterations of the Champions Cup in 2020. We've seen the end of the 1920 season and the start of the 2021 season. So it is on here twice. Towards the end of the 1920 season, I had a look through some, as a fly buzzes around, some of the fixtures from the end of the year, but there's really one that sticks out. And that game that stuck out was the final. It was the final. It was Exeter up against Racing 92. The team which is like totally gets the reputation for being forwards orientated, great mauls and 5-meter tap and goes. And Racing 92, which is like Finn Russell and Kurtley Beale and Simon Zebo and just all these mad, like Teddy Toma and all these kind of mad players who just, play from everywhere. So I sprayed that fly. You can probably hear him. He's a goner pretty soon. 31-27. I think it had, 5 tries in the first half. And finals are often a pretty kind of dour affair. So the fact that it went 5 tries in the first half, and I seem to remember it was on pretty early in the morning, 5 tries was certainly a good reason to get out of bed and watch some rugby. Added to the fact that Racing had come out of a lockdown with COVID cases like in the weeks before this game, and they still managed to put up a bit of a fight. Next, the Tri Nations. There's only one for this one, isn't there? It has to be the Pumas win over the All Blacks. There's kind of a few games in your life that you will remember what you were doing when you watched that game. Like usually it's like a World Cup final or, Super Rugby final, Champions Cup final, Pro 14 or whatever final, Premiership final. But that game, just because it's the first time the Pumas have ever beaten the All Blacks, it's very reminiscent for me as an All Blacks fan of the first time seeing Ireland beat the All Blacks. Growing up my whole life, man, this Argentina is not a team that beats the All Blacks. So to see them do it the first time was pretty incredible. The defense, Nico Sanchez scored all the points. He scored a try, he kicked penalties. He was kicking them from miles. I mean, Caleb Clark got a try at the death to at least bring it within 10 points, but ultimately that day was all about the Pumas. Crema and Matera with that play for my country moment. So, yeah, definitely a special one to witness that 76th minute 50 plus meter penalty from Sanchez was the one that sealed it. So, yeah, really, really great watch. I'm sure you've all seen that one. As for the Autumn Nations, kind of similar story, I guess. Similar 22-19 England over France. That one, it's just one of those like finals that finally fits the billing, I guess. It's not always the case with a final. Sometimes the final is a bit of a letdown. Now, the refereeing in this one was pretty controversial, but I kind of chose not to look at it from that angle. Because it was at the end, I think the ref missed a knock-on or something that everyone was kind of crying foul. Ultimately, for mine, it was a game of two halves. French had the better of the first half. England had the better of the second half. But ultimately, England should have been winning this one on paper, right? Because it's a competition organised on the fly. Japan pull out. Georgia comes in. Fiji's got COVID cases. France can't play their best players for more than X number of games. They end up sending a B team to the final against England's virtually their World Cup team from last year. And it's competitive. France have the better of the first half, clearly, and they're such a good team with such a lot of depth. Very pleasing to see. England do come good in the second half and finally break through at the death. I know people will talk about the knock-ons and whatnot, but ultimately, man, Farrell missed half his kicks, which was a bit of a problem. But ultimately, in terms of a spectacle, I mean, I thought it was there. I was pretty entertained. Who knew what was going to happen? I was spoiled to the result, like right before the end, which was a bit deflating. But if I'd not known the result, it would have been even better. But up until extra time, I think I didn't know the result pretty much. So, yeah, good times. Finally, the Champions Cup season, which has gotten underway for this and next year. Hopefully, it's a better next year for the second half of the competition. This game, Clermont against Munster, does live on in quite recent memory. So it was 39-31 in the end. Munster get an away from home win over in France. And remember, like the week before, Munster had gotten a decent win over Harlequins, and Clermont had demolished, was it Bristol? So it was looking pretty bad on paper. Was it Bristol? Anyway, this game, 39-31, Clermont score after 26 seconds. 26 seconds they get a try, and they go out to like a 19-point lead. But Munster keep chipping away with the penalties, and they score enough tries to eventually get in front, man. It was a crazy, hell of an amazing comeback win. Really, really crazy stuff. CJ Stander is having a blinder and absolutely smiling through the whole game. It's Hanrahan, the fly half for Munster, kicks 6 out of 6 penalties. He kicks 3 from 3 conversions. It's just the joy to behold. So yeah, like I said, man, like 2020's not been the best year, but we've still had some good rugby. I know not everyone follows every competition. Certainly, like following things like the Champions Cup is a relatively new thing to me, but I would encourage everyone, if you get time, man, if you got free time, even just put it on in the background, pick a team from a competition, start watching some of the other games, because you can basically get rugby all the year round, man. I recommend the Blues. They're a good team to follow. You can see they're on the board here in Super Rugby Aotearoa. Follow them for the 2021 season. But yeah, if you're a New Zealander, man, like follow Munster. They're a really fun team to watch as well. They got Larkham coaching them. They got a South African. Van Graan is their director of rugby. Doug Howlett used to play for them. You know, there's stories with each of these teams. Go Racing 92, man. Finn Russell and a madhouse kind of exciting team with some big forwards as well. But yeah, if you do follow any other teams outside your own kind of normal team, do let me know. But also, what were your kind of favorite games of these competitions? There's certainly more than these ones. These are just a few that I picked out which kind of stand out. I will, as I said, check the highlights that I can find in the description. So also go and have a look and see if there's a team you fancy seeing a bit more of. Share some of the rugby love for 2021. But anyway, I should say I didn't do the Pro 14, the Top 14, or the Premiership because I don't really watch enough of those. MLR, I didn't really watch enough of. Top League, I don't think I saw any. But if there's other standout games from those competitions as well, do let us know in the comments. Yeah. Cheers, guys. Check out my Patreon page if you haven't done so. Appreciate any support that comes through there. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.